I want to talk to you guys about Trump's persistent problem. I think one of the biggest reasons why the special election saw Democrat sweeps in every single election, from Connecticut to Pennsylvania to Virginia to New Jersey, anyway, to Georgia. Anywhere the Democrats ran, they won. And while the Republican reprieve has been, these were all blue states. No, these are all blue states, blue people winning in blue states. Virginia had a Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin. I remember that race and how close it was, and how much that Mike Johnson jumped around and talked about what that meant for the country, the mandate that was being sent, the message that was being sent about what was going to happen in 2024 when Glenn Youngkin won in 2022. And so now for them to just look past the results of the Virginia gubernatorial election was bizarre to me. But even more bizarre was them looking past the legislative elections, which saw the Democratic majority increase to a 65-35 margin. And even stranger to me was to overlook Georgia. Georgia, of all places. Georgia, blue Georgia. Okay, if they're conceding that Georgia's blue now, the Democratic Party might be a little more ahead than I thought, and the Republican Party might be more of a crisis than I thought. But again, I think this is more something to beat away immediate concern as they try to find a way to recover and don't head towards the iceberg that the midterms are currently looking at from the political headwinds that we see right now from polling and from special election results. But I wanted to hit on what I think is the biggest political issue, the biggest specific policy issue that Americans have that is sinking Trump. Trump was not elected off of the fact that, hey, Trump, we want him to be somebody that's presentable, or we want Trump to, go around and, necessarily even build world peace, even though he presented himself as a peace president. The main thing that got him elected was the idea that he was going to fix the economy. He was going to bring down inflation. He was going to bring down the price of energy, and he was going to bring out people's paychecks while bringing down the cost of living. He was going to deal with the housing crisis, and he was going to deal with the price of groceries. Then he was going to make all of this possible on top of it by making foreign countries pay for it through tariffs, which would also help solve one of America's bigger issues as of the last 50, 60, 70 years, deindustrialization, bringing industrial jobs back to the United States. That was his economic pitch. Now, there's a lot of problems with this, i.e., how is he going to get the tariffs through Congress? Number two, how are the tariffs going to bring the jobs back? Number three, are the tariffs negotiable? If they are negotiable, is that going to really incentivize people to invest based upon them, because they might be removed tomorrow? What is this going to be something that has done with a scalpel or sledgehammer? We found out sledgehammer when they included Penguin Island. And so there were a lot of finer details that might have been lost in the sauce. There might be a lot of questions for people like me about how tariffs are going to be passed down to the consumer. That the president of the United States did not have the votes. He ended up doing it through executive action, which it looks like is going to be declared probably illegal by the Supreme Court from the stuff that I am hearing from the questions that they are asking the Trump administration's lawyers. But this economic message is probably one of the biggest things that delivered Trump the presidency. On top of Joe Biden's health problems, his mental state, and the age problem, as they did this big old switcheroo. But then he gets into office, and after promising immediate financial relief, grocery prices go up. Not only do grocery prices go up, but the price of other goods, like toys, go up, especially due to the tariffs on countries like China, which produce a lot of the toys, which now that we're going around towards Christmas time is probably going to hurt a little bit more. The housing crisis has not been attacked from any angle. There has been no attempt for Trump, who has promised a healthcare plan for the last decade, to present a healthcare plan, as the Democrats are pushing on the issue of extending the healthcare subsidies. We have seen some certain support networks for Americans, like those ACA subsidies, like the healthcare plans of many lower income Americans, and of course the jeopardizing of the SNAP program. And we have not seen any progress really on the economy. If you believe in the great deal about tariffs will lead to our reindustrialization, will lead to our economic revitalization, if you believe in that great pitch, then maybe we're getting somewhere, even though we have lost more industrial jobs than we have gained this year. But when it comes to the majority of areas where Americans are spending money, they're spending more money, which is the opposite of what they wanted, and they're not happy about it. Let me give you some data from Fox. Americans are spending more on 71% groceries, 59% utilities, 43% healthcare, 39% housing, 37% gasoline. How much would you blame Trump for inflation? 40% says not much or not at all. 59% says good amount or great deal. These are bad numbers. This is from Fox News. This is from a network that would be predisposed to wanting Trump to do well so they can do well. And this is the type of commentary that they had about the price of beef, which has also gone up.
Looking at right now on our screen, I don't know if you can see it, just the increase in beef prices, for ground beef or steaks, etc. Everyone who goes to the grocery store knows that that's happening.
I remember being in a, I don't know if you call it a debate conversation with a cattle rancher, and this being used as an example of good things that Trump is doing because it was bringing them money at the same time that it was costing Americans more. Now, maybe if it was just one industry that saw this price increase to correct for the fact that the industry is hurting, okay. But when it's across multiple categories across the entire grocery cart, well, then you're going to get a much bigger bill when it's time to pay. And so what has Trump done to react to this? He was supposed to be the businessman. He was supposed to be Mr. Art of the Deal. He was the guy talking about economic relief on day one. So how has he reacted PR-wise now in the fallout of the special election where his side got decimated, and that polling data has been consistent that they are unhappy with his performance on the economy? What has which was, again, the main issue that got Trump elected in the first place. How has Trump decided to talk? Well, number one, Trump keeps talking about his ballroom. Now, I think that a ballroom for diplomatic events isn't necessarily the worst idea on earth. I don't think it's necessary, but it's not necessarily the worst deal on earth. But if you keep talking about your ballroom and pictures of you making your ballroom, which reportedly you want to call the Trump ballroom, name it after yourself, fantastic, is going viral during the government shutdown, and as Americans are suffering economically, they're seeing you prepare your golden covered palace. This type of image you're producing isn't going to be good for you.
It'll be a large, beautiful, they had an event the other day. They could hold, with tables, they could hold 79 people. Now, if you have President Xi from China, or if you have some big state event, we have no place to have it.
Not just regular people. They put just regular people invite on.
Obama wouldn't mind this. Mrs. Obama obviously wouldn't mind. They would put a tent on the lawn. It was a low section because that's the only section you have. So it was a low section. If it rained, you were sitting in 6 inches of water. It was a disaster. We're going to have the best ballroom anywhere in the world. And I built a lot of them. You know that. You know a lot of them. This will be one of the greatest ballrooms in the world.
There was a report that Melania didn't love this idea. Is that true?
She loved her little tiny office. But you know what? She's very smart. In about one day, if you would ask her now, she says it's great. But just so you understand.
So when this is the type of stuff he's focusing on, when the majority of Americans want him to talk about the economy, that's a problem. And mind you, it's not just that. It's also being layered upon when he's asked questions about the economy. He'll sometimes say everything's great, which you can run away from on an issue where it's like scientists are studying it and people don't interact with it on their day-to-day life. Lying about that might be easier. But when people have to go out and buy groceries and they have to look at their bill, that's much harder to run away from. And so in some instances, he just told reporters, I don't think I should have to talk about affordability. I don't think I should have to talk about the economy. I don't think I should have to talk about inflation. Everything's fine. Everything's good, which, again, is not a good perception for those who are worried about it. It's not a good perception at all. 1 second. I wanted to throw something at you because this is something that I thought was fascinating. One way that Trump tried to push back against this problem of him just doing terribly on the economy seemed to almost kind of resemble the electioneering of Viktor Orban in Hungary. See, anytime Viktor Orban is doing bad in the polls and election time is going around, and this is not unique to Hungary, but if election time is coming around and you're down the polls, you just promise a bunch of stuff. Promise everybody anything you can. And sometimes it is tax credits, but in this instance, Donald Trump just offers to give every American $2,000. People that are against tariffs are fools. We are now the most richest, most respected country in the world, with almost no inflation and a record stock market price. 401ks are highest ever. We are taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down our enormous debt. 37 trillion. Record investment in the USA. Plants and factories going up all over the place. A dividend of at least $2,000, not including high-income people, will be paid to everyone. Now, who exactly counts as a high-income person and who doesn't count as a high-income person is not clearly laid out here. So when trying to calculate the cost of this $2,000 handout, which, by the way, will be inflationary, it will be inflationary. If a majority of Americans right now are saying they're worried about inflation, an action like this will be inflationary. Now, you can take an action that is inflationary but is worth it because you have to take it. So there should be a question about whether or not something like this is worth it. But $2,000 a person, if you don't include the highest earning individuals, under some estimations would be about $600 million. If it is done in a way that is similar to the COVID era check that was sent out. That was done, that data was done by a nonpartisan institute. There are other estimations where if you said, for example, it was 200 million Americans and you just cut off like 130 of the highest earning in their families, then that would be $400 billion still. So we're talking about a range of $400 to $600 billion. Now, what's interesting is that he's talking about tariff revenues. He's talking about, we're making, we have a record stock market price. 401ks are the highest, Oh my gosh, this is all fantastic. We'll soon begin paying down our enormous debt. Right now he expanded the deficit to the big, beautiful bill, did not shrink it. Especially since the constitutionality of the tariffs, which is a linchpin for his debt reduction, is up in the air. And there's a decent chance that they could be declared illegal from, again, what we're hearing from the Supreme Court. We don't even know if he's going to be able to hold on to the money that they've taken and possibly taxed unconstitutionally. But even if you include that money, 401ks are not American government revenue. Record stock market price is not American government revenue. Okay. The only thing that is American government revenue is the tariffs, and that might be taken away. But even if you include the tariffs, it would be estimated this would be more expensive than all of the revenue that we've brought in tariffs. So this is possibly, this is inflationary. We don't know how he would pay for it. And it would cost more than even the money that he has set aside for tariffs, which, by the way, he's also promised to other political subgroups in this country, including soybean farmers, as he talked about taking that money and giving them billions of dollars. And you don't even have enough money in that fund to do the $2,000 a person deployment. But you certainly don't have the money for it if you're also taking that money and giving it to soybean farmers. So, I saw like the big thing in advance of this from the administration has been trying to adjust the position to slither away from this $2,000 a person dividend, with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent coming out and say, these 2,000 dividends could come in many forms. It could be a tax decreases. It could be no tax on tips. Listen to this.
It could, the $2,000 dividend could come in lots of forms, in lots of ways, George. It could be just the tax decreases that we are seeing on the president's agenda. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility of auto loans. So, those are substantial deductions that, are being financed in the tax bill.
Secretary.
Essentially, Donald Trump came out and he did the equivalent of that, like, what the money president scene from. I mean, I don't want to, I'm a Zoomer and kind of referencing this show is kind of like a little stereotypical, but he did the money president thing.
Hey, did you see Mr. Frog just announced his plan to fix the economy? Man, he is good.
Girl, I'll show that toad bastard an ergonomic plan. Hello, America. I'm going to be the money president. Each and every one of you get $1 billion each, so you can all be rich.
Whoa, 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 what are you doing? You can't do that. You'll crash the economy.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Everybody's going to have to give back all that money to the government. By the way, sorry about those loud noises. That was just from my diaper. I don't want to have another accident from a bad lamp. All better.
Dude, check the news. It doesn't matter what channel.
Oh my God. I mean, the idea of giving it to people through a no tax on tips. What if you don't work for tips? No tax on tips essentially gives people who don't work for tips a larger tax burden than those who do work for tips. And so how is that $2,000 per person if it's somehow being fulfilled through a no tax on tips policy that the president already promised on the campaign trail? Anyway, this didn't vibe well. It didn't really reach the voters in a way of woohoo, let's all talk about it. Mind you, Andrew Yang made like $1,000 a month, like a campaign staple, and got his name known in politics. Trump comes out, says $2,000 a month, has no clue how to pay for it, and immediately it's just forgotten, just like fades through the news cycle like it was nothing. Like it was nothing. What was that other? Also, I do want to throw out there that this idea of like, where is he going to pay for it? It's not something that is just constrained to the $2,000 a month. This is something that is constrained to many political issues, as in not constrained at all. It actually varies across them. Here is Donald Trump talking about his other proposal to pay air traffic controllers who stayed on the job and didn't use any of their sick days $10,000 a month bonus. Mind you, somebody could be taking a sick day because they don't want to go into work because they have to go work Uber in order to feed their family because they missed 2 fucking paychecks, or because they have, cancer treatment, or they have something like an actual medical emergency, and those people are going to be avoided for $10,000 bonuses. There's even a question about whether or not they're going to be getting paid, this all being thrown around. And he throws out this idea to give the people who stayed the whole time these $10,000 bonuses. And Ingram asks him where the money's going to come from, and he's just left blank.
Out a Truth Social post earlier today,
I did.
where you blasted the air traffic controllers who had not shown up for work and offered potentially a bonus of $10,000 for those who have worked.
Listen to that. By the way, she doesn't mention the fact that, listen to this, all air traffic controllers must get back to work now. Anyone who doesn't will be substantially docked. For those air traffic controllers who were great patriots and didn't take any time off for the Democrat shutdown hoax, I'll be recommending a bonus of $10,000 per person for distinguished service to our country. Docked. What does that mean?
$1,000 for those who have worked despite the shutdown. Are you worried that, given the fact that we have a deficit of air traffic controllers still, I know we're trying to change that, that might be a difficult
No, we don't
position?
have much of a deficit, and we have a lot of people want the job. What I was not happy when I saw all these people, we have to, look, life is not so easy for anybody. Our country's never done better. We should not have had people leaving their jobs. And what I basically...
Life is not so easy. I wonder why the polling is its worst it's been for its term right now. I mean, we're at 37% per CNN. If we're down in the 30s, that's a red alarm. If we get down to the low 30s, we're going mission critical here.
Did is say the ones that stayed, of which there were a lot of them, I'm sending them a $10,000 bonus.
Where's that money coming from?
I don't know. I'll get it from someplace. I always get the money from someplace regardless. It doesn't matter. I do a lot of bonuses for people because it's really something that, it's like the American way when you think about it. So here's somebody that goes and shows up every single day. Some of them showed up early because they knew there was going to be a problem. Those people should be rewarded. Others, we can't make it. We can't. A lot of the people that showed up also had a second job. They took a second job temporarily, but they all know the money's coming, and the money was coming. So I want to reward the people that showed up without a lot of nonsense, without a lot of talk. They did their job, and in many cases, they worked longer hours to get us through this period.
When can we?
By the way, if your response is to ignore the crises, and there's there's this problem where they don't know whether to ignore the crises, pretend the crisis isn't there. Because I saw Scott Bassett was on a program recently, and you've got two different narratives. I remember once Trump came out and he said, if it's bad on the economy, it's Biden's. If it's good on the economy, then it's mine. During the start of the administration. Now that was ridiculous when he said it at the time, and he quickly stopped saying it and trying to find a way to say the same thing while not saying the same exact thing, since on its face it seemed ridiculous. But when you say the same exact thing in a bunch of different words, you could still get caught in the same trap, which is somebody figuring out that you're trying to basically section off portions of the economy that you don't like and not take responsibility for it, while taking responsibility for any positive indicator. Scott Bassett, not Donald Trump, but his Treasury Secretary, was caught in this conundrum while on a morning interview for MSNBC.
So, Mr. Secretary, it's not news anchors at NBC saying it, it's the voters a week ago saying life is too expensive in this country. So do you believe the idea that voters are saying affordability is a problem for me is a con job?
I believe even this morning you had two people come on and say, well, I look at the price at the pump and I know costs are up. Well, gasoline's down. So that is a con job. And I think that's what's frustrating.
So you don't believe that all the people who went to vote last Tuesday on the issue of affordability, my rent's too high, I can't afford to buy a house, groceries are too expensive, you think they're just misperceiving what's happening in their lives?
I think that that we inherited an affordability crisis. We have slowed the price increases down, and they are going to continue to slow down, and that real working class wages will go up, and that will address the affordability issue. And I think this is what Democrats are afraid to do. They've gone to the courts to try to stop President Trump and this great economy. That hasn't worked. They get overruled at SCOTUS. We go to the media, who carries their water. That hasn't worked, so they shut down the government and hurt the economy. Let's keep the economy open. Let our policies kick in, and let's see if what I just talked about, let's see if those two lines cross. Costs come down, real wages.
By the way, the government shutdown didn't end the tariffs. The tariffs were still in place, with decisions pending in court. So the idea of they shut down the government so these policies can't kick in. The policies have kicked in. It's just that the policies were not implemented in a way that was convincing and was not implemented in a way that was thought out. When you implement a bunch of tariffs and then after firing the big gun, then start to specialize, going around and saying, oh, we only actually... First, we're going to tariff entire countries. Oh, then we're going to tariff entire industries. Then we're going to tariff specific companies. Then we're going to tariff specific components. When you keep going down that line and you keep specializing it further and further and further and further every month that passes, it seems like you didn't use a lot of thought at the start. And then as the economic consequences started to register throughout the economy, you started to narrow down your area of focus to be more supportive, or at least be more thought out towards trying to bring industry either back to the United States or targeting businesses that do not benefit the United States, i.e. you're targeting a business that is, competing with American producers. Whatever, you get the idea.
go up, and then we can have an election next November.
You can blame the media. I understand that's part of your job, but let's talk about voters who are saying life is too expensive. Not just talking about Democrats in New York City who might have voted for Mayor-elect Mamdani, ranchers, Republicans in red states saying things are too expensive. What do you say to them? Not that it's a con job, but they feel like life is too expensive, but that it's a reality of their lives.
I say that there are many aspects of affordability that have gotten...
Cryptic_command got a tier 1 subscription. Love your work, Dylan. Please stay safe. Also, there were no deaths at Tiananmen Square. Bing chilling.
Thank you for the tier 1 sub. If I was there and I was a police officer, I just want you to know I would harass you. I would think enough of you, Cryptic Command, that I would harass you.
Better under President Trump. They're going to continue to get better. I mean, unbelievably, Bloomberg had an article yesterday that said, oh, mortgage rates aren't down that much. Well, on inauguration day, a 30-year mortgage was 7.8%. Yesterday it was 6.22%. That is the single biggest component of buying a new home. And that is a gigantic drop. But it said, oh, they're just down slightly.
Look, it's going to be very hard for you to both claim that any affordability crisis is the last administration's, while also claiming that this issue is a con job. Doing both at the same time makes people think you're not taking their issues seriously on its face. Speaking of mortgages, did you hear about Trump's new 50-year mortgage scheme? Yes, 50 years. That means if you're 30 years old, you can own a home by the time you're 80. By the way, before the idea was 30, but Trump didn't seem to know that. Didn't seem that the idea was, okay, you start 30, you have a home by your 60, and then by the time retirement comes around, you're well, you've got a home. He thought it was different. He seems to have never participated in a 30-year mortgage or knows much about it.
Housing costs are still out of reach. Housing costs are still out of reach, and another thing that your administration is trying to tackle. Many Americans, the average age of first-time home buyers are now up to age 40, which is sad for the country you and I grew up in.
I inherited that. Look, you have to understand.
Right, but let me get to the question, though, because your housing director has proposed something that has enraged your MAGA friends, which is this 50-year mortgage idea. So a significant MAGA backlash, calling it a giveaway to the banks and simply prolonging the time it would take for Americans to own a home outright. Is that really a good idea?
It's not even a big deal. I mean, you go from 40 to 50 years, and what it means is you pay something less. From 30, that some people had a 40, and then now they have a 50. All it means is you pay less per month. You pay it over a longer period of time. It's not like a big factor. It might help a little bit. But the problem was that Biden did this. He increased the interest rates, and I have a lousy Fed person who's going to be gone in a few months.
Out of touch, out of mind, out of sight. This is the stuff that will kill him come midterms. These are the types of reactions from Trump, which shows that he is off his game and he doesn't have his finger on the pulse for how Americans are feeling right now. You cannot only claim that it is either A, Biden's fault, or B, not a problem at all in the first place. And if you listen to how he talks about these workers who he wants to give $10,000 to, and let me just say, the Air Traffic Controllers Union was not happy when they heard him talk about the $10,000 and all those other workers, whether they would be deducted or defunct, or just, he was very vague, and he made it particularly vague on what would happen to the people who did not show up. I wonder if I could see Air Traffic Control, if I could play what their controller union president said. He was getting emotional. And I mean, considering he's talking about him like this, it isn't surprising.
Rewarded others, we can't make it. We can't, a lot of rewarded others. We can't make it. We can't, a lot of the people that showed up also had a second job. They took a second job temporarily, but they all know the money's coming, and the money was coming. So I want to reward the people that showed up without a lot of nonsense, without a lot of talk. They did their job, and in many cases, they worked longer hours to get us through this period.
When can we expect the...
So when he says that they knew that the money was coming, Donald Trump was the only person who put that into question. He was the person who came out and said, you know, will they get back pay? And he put it into question as a way of leveraging against the Democrats during the shutdown, which could be one of the factors that eventually led to Tim Kaine, Angus King, and others paving and passing the Senate bill to reopen the government that was then eventually passed down back to the House. It is probably going to pass tomorrow. So when he says that, oh, you know, of course they were always going to get it. Everybody knew they were always going to get it. No, they didn't. He put it in question, which is part of the reason people stayed home. Is if it is a look, it's one thing to tell them you're going to get paid in 2 months. I know it sucks, but you're going to get paid in 2 months. It's another thing to say you'll probably get paid in 2 months. Once you enter that, probably, but you know, some federal workers, we won't say which ones, because if we said which ones, that'd probably be a scandal in and of itself. But some federal workers, maybe they don't deserve back pay, as well as using it as another opportunity to lay off workers. So, no, I don't think. I don't think. I don't think. In fact, I don't think at all. Did you guys see him at the Washington Commanders game and how booed he got? And they were not happy about it in MAGA world. This is the most disgraceful thing I've ever seen. Commanders fan booed President Trump while he was literally enlisting troops into the United States military. Pure trash. Nobody knew what he was doing, man. They just knew that they were watching a football game, and then all of a sudden, the president's speaking. And the president is not that beloved in the D.C. area. And people would think, oh, you mean D.C. locals. No, Maryland locals, Northern Virginia locals, and Northern Pennsylvania and parts of Delaware locals largely do not like him. Vicious. He's vicious. It's vicious. He's got to be able to have some ability to tune himself into what's going on and in the feeling on the ground. Because if he doesn't, then it's going to be people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are getting ahead of the president of the United States, and it might be people like her who actually outlast parts of his legacy if he doesn't realize before the midterms exactly how badly people feel about the economy and how undelivered his promises look to the average voter, with independents breaking extremely hard against him on the economy at a ratio of 78 to 79%, thinking he's doing poorly on the economy and blaming him for the economy. This has gotten bad enough that Marjorie Taylor Greene has come out and she started distancing herself from the Republicans in the House, from the shutdown. And this has led to even a small spat between him and her, Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene, as she has read some of the writing on the wall.
And I feel like our majority is being ruined. I really do.
By what exactly?
Inaction. I voted to fund the government on September 18th. And then guess what? We haven't been to work since.
But whose fault is that?
Mike Johnson's.
Why?
He's told us not to come back. He's keeping the House out of session. All the American people are working every single day.
Chuck Schumer. You don't think it's related to the shutdown?
Chuck Schumer's in the Senate, everybody. Yeah. Mike Johnson is in the House. He's the Speaker of the House. And he can bring us into this session where we can be passing our bills. We can have our committees at work.
This really undermined Trump because she didn't just say it on the Megyn Kelly show. She said it on CNN. She said it on the 3-letter mainstream networks that are also broadcasting into the homes of the opposition or, independents that you want to win over. And if people see one of Trump's most stalwart defenders coming out and saying about the shutdown, that's not going to help. That's breaking of the rake and file. Because if people can come out and say these words, this is very convincing to somebody, or could be convincing to somebody who might not be tied into one side. Even Donald Trump's biggest supporters, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, blame the Republicans for the shutdown. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene agrees that the economy is not in good shape, which she has. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene agrees that the ACA tax credit should be extended, which she does. And so to have one of your most well-known stalwart defenders who has gotten well-known by constantly being in front of cameras, constantly defending the president of the United States, constantly posting on social media, being able to inject her name into the news cycle for outrageous reasons, for terrible reasons, for ridiculous reasons, for reasons that she probably views as virtuous, she comes out and says these things about the shutdown, says these things about the economy. What does Donald Trump say in response to where Marjorie Taylor Greene is right now? As people are able to say, even Marjorie. Well, he says she's lost her way. Instead of taking it as a warning sign, as a canary in the coal mine, he takes it as a wayward member of the flock.
After a meeting with the Syrian president earlier today, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a big ally of yours, said that she would rather see you focused on nonstop domestic policy meetings here at the White House instead of nonstop foreign policy meetings. What's your response to her saying that, and also saying that grocery prices are up and not down, as you've said?
Yeah, so I don't know what happened to Marjorie. She's a nice woman, but I don't know what happened. She's lost her way, I think. But I have to view the presidency as a worldwide situation, not locally. I mean, we could have a world that's on fire where wars come to our shores very easily if you had a bad president. We had a horrible president, and we ended up with...
And then it's pivoting to the usual dialogue trees. Trump has gotten comfortable. You can hear it in his responses to questions like this, where he slides into the dialogue trees, and when he sees certain cracks in the coalition that is never shown before after a special election that was much more devastating than what Democrats suffered in 2022 before they lost the election in 2024. Where we were seeing gains of 13 to 16 points in certain areas, flipping Trump districts blue in places from Connecticut to Virginia to Georgia to Pennsylvania to all these different places, to New Jersey. And it was supposed to be close to New Jersey. It was supposed to be a close race, 13-point curb stomping. But he's gotten comfortable. There seemed to be some acknowledgement after the election that they had to change something. But whatever that thing he thinks needs to change, apparently he does not think it's his own messaging to the rest of the parties. Because there could be a justification and a defense, not only under the idea that, oh, these are all blue cities. Ridiculous when you talk about Georgia. Ridiculous when you're talking about Virginia when Glenn Youngkin won the last election. But the other idea is Trump's not on the ballot. So Trump can rest on his loyals on the idea that, oh, come on, I'm not on the ballot. It's not my fault. But if you can build a movement that does not go past you, then you don't build a legacy that goes past you. If the fact of the matter is that if he's not on the ballot, the Republicans are screwed, well, he's not going to be directly on the ballot in 2026. His agenda will be on the ballot in 2026. That might perform some of the tasks, not all of it. And he can't be on the ballot in 2028 because there's a constitutional term limit. So he's been on the ballot 3 years in a row, which has helped buoy Republican turnout. But what happens in 2028? And hell, what even happens in 2026? Especially when his main issue that got him in there is now the main issue causing him headaches. Super based, okay? Super based.